All right, it's time once again for a meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of Sabre. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner Waterman chapter of Sabre in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. Now, let's get started in the usual way tonight. Joe Ross, where are you?
I'm here.
What is your favorite entry in your email this day in baseball history today? Go.
Thank you, Bruce, and hello to everybody. Hope you're all staying away from the snow. The best one this time was from the college ranks of 2019, where Dan Gibson, a college sophomore, hit something that hasn't been done in Major League Baseball, period. And that was to hit a home run cycle in 4 innings in softball, a grand slam, a 3-run homer, a 2-run homer, and a solo homer. And that was done by a college sophomore for Arkansas, playing against SIU Edwardsville and beating them 15-3. Of course, most of the runs were done by Dan, who actually is Danielle Gibson, and it was girls softball. That's a little bit of what happened today in baseball history.
How do they get your email list?
I'm glad you asked. That is readily available. If you give me an email at J&E Ross, Bruce has the email address, and it's on the Sabre list anyway.
Right.
J&E Ross at gmail.com, and I'll tell you how to do it. We give special pricing for Sabre members, and that's a little bit of what it is.
There you go. If you are interested in getting on his list, send him an email. He can go over all the particulars with you. Jeff Cohen, where are you, my guy?
Thank you, Bruce.
What's going on with those podcasts, dude?
Yes, this week on the Baseball BBQ podcast, we dropped an interview with Sweeney Murdy of he was a Yankee beat reporter, also on WFAN and SNY TV. That was last one that was dropped on Saturday. This one coming up on Saturday is interview with Louis Schiff. He wrote a book, Attorneys in the Hall of Fame, and we talk about a couple of them. One of them you know very well, and that is I forgot who that is. The manager of the White Sox. What's his name?
LaRussa.
Tony LaRussa.
You
Thank
okay,
you very
Jeff?
much. I was shoveling all day. Give me a
I
break,
know.
huh? Yeah. And actually, after this meeting, I have an interview with Yogi Berra's son, Larry Berra, which will be up on YouTube by tomorrow morning. So that's what's happening with the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame and the Baseball and BBQ podcasts.
Oh, that's fantastic. If you are not programming your podcatcher to grab those podcasts and enjoy them every week, you need to do that right after this meeting. Don't leave now. Do it after the meeting, because that's some great long form baseball stuff. And I mean, there's barbecue in there too. It's baseball and food. Perfect. It's perfect. We had Lou Schiff on a while back, and he's just a terrific guy. He's a really nice fella. If I recall, I read that he is now a board member with the IWBC. Is that right, Jeff?
I'm not sure if that's true, but I know he is a Sabre member.
Yeah, he is definitely a Sabre member, and was kind enough to inscribe a book to my father-in-law, who is an attorney, for a Christmas present, and that was awful nice. But yeah, if you're not, grab that one specifically, because that's going to be a good one. Lewis is a good guy. Hey, Gary, are you here? You still here, Gary? Gary Mintz still here? Could you unmute for just a second, Gary?
Yeah. Yes, I'm unmuted.
Gary, what's going on with the New York Giants Preservation Society?
Thursday, we have Brad Mangan. Brad is a well-known sports photographer, baseball, did a lot of Sports Illustrated covers, and he's really associated with the San Francisco Giants. So if anybody's interested in seeing some great shots from the 80s, 90s, thousands, and up to the present day, drop me a line, and I'd be happy to send you the link for Thursday. But Brad is a fabulous photographer.
That's very good. That's excellent. Molly in the chat just put, "We can see you, but we can't hear you." I don't know what that means.
You heard me, okay, right?
I hear you just fine. I don't know. Damien's giving me a thumbs up.
It's for Ryan McClanahan.
Oh, it's poor Ryan. Okay. Poor Ryan's having trouble with his mic tonight. I don't know. It's the snow, Ryan. It's the snow. We're just going to chalk it up to the snow. Hey, Bill, I see Bill Nolan here tonight, one of my colleagues on the board of directors. I wanted to ask you, Bill, what's coming up for Saber Publications? What's the next book that's coming out?
The next book coming out is on the 2001 Seattle Mariners, this being the 25th anniversary of the year that they did so well.
Yeah.
And then the one after that one will be probably on the Cape Cod League, Cape Cod Baseball League. 1,800 people have gone through the Cape Cod League and made it to the major leagues. Not 18, 1,800. It's unbelievable.
1,800?
Well,
ooh, I didn't know that. I just learned something. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Wow. Are there any books in the pipeline that need writers or you need help with?
We still need ideas for the Lou Gehrig book. We could use some essay ideas for that one. Most of the books.
You just hit mute on yourself there, Bill. I don't know what happened. There we go.
Touched the wrong button.
Oops.
Yeah, we just signed up the final author for the 2002 Angels book that we're aiming for next year. And, things are coming along pretty well.
Can folks send you an email directly if they have questions about how they can get involved with the book project?
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to hear from anybody. And it's a complicated email, but I'm in the Saber directory, and it's bill@downtheroadrecords.com.
That is not complicated at all. Bill@downtheroadrecords.com that's great. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you. I'm going to warn everybody now, okay? Because I don't want anybody emailing me saying, "Where'd you go?" I am planning a summer hiatus beginning May 18th. I'm actually going to try to get outside and go to some ball games and soak up some vitamin D and all of that. And after May 18th, we'll come back in September on September 14th at a new time. We're going to move it to 7:30 Eastern so that I can actually get home and not have to race to my office to start these meetings for all of you, because having to change jobs last year just kind of screwed up all of my timing and such. But there you have it. I have made contact, for those who are local, I have made contact with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. They want to give us 2 dates for get-togethers at their ballpark, and we're in the process of choosing those now. I'm hoping that one of them is going to be right around Memorial Day weekend. I'd like to choose one date prior to the convention and one date after the convention. I'm trying to also get in touch with the Nashua Silver Knights. They're not quite as responsive as they used to be. I think they are just gearing up their staff. If I recall correctly, I got in touch with them closer to the start of the season, but I'm going to keep working on that. I'd like to have 3 or 4 in-person events with everybody this summer. All right, it is now time for our feature presentation. While baseball's post-war years are often called the golden age of the sport, it was also an era when the reserve clause bound players to their teams and suppressed their rights and wages. Under these conditions came Danny Gardella, who openly resisted this bondage and launched the legal fight against the reserve clause that set the stage for Curt Flood and Marvin Miller's free agency challenge 2 decades later. This presentation will tell the story of a little-known yet remarkable ball player who stood up to Major League Baseball and laid the legal foundation for free agency. It will recount Gardella's humble beginnings, his struggle to establish himself as a professional ball player, his entertaining antics on and off the field, and his jump from organized baseball to the Mexican League that was the spark not only for challenging the reserve clause, but for creating America's most powerful labor union, the MLB Players Association. Saber member Rob Elias is Emeritus Professor of Politics and Legal Studies, University of San Francisco. He taught previously at Tufts, McGill, Penn State, the University of Maryland, and UC Berkeley. His baseball books include Baseball and the American Dream, Major League Rebels, The Empire Strikes Out, The Deadly Tools of Ignorance, Baseball Rebels, and the topic of tonight's presentation, Dangerous Danny Gardella, Baseball's Neglected Trailblazer. For today's Millionaire athletes, Rob Elias. Welcome to Northern New England. Did you bring your shovel? How are you?
I don't need a shovel out here. Why would I bring a shovel?
No one likes a braggart, man.
Oh,
It's all yours. Go get them.
Yeah, thanks. So Bruce and I had this set up. I don't know what you're seeing on your screen now. I may have to reset this up, Bruce. What are you seeing on
I would like you to share your screen down the bottom again.
Okay, I'm going to
do
have
what
to
you
start.
did earlier, and it will go right through. And you are a co-host, so it should work just fine. Give us just a minute, folks. We apologize. So you'll hit share, and then you'll choose your... My wife can walk you through it if necessary.
Green bottom on the bottom middle of the screen. You're going to hit share screen. Once you hit share screen, you're going to find the file that you want to share with us.
Yeah, I know. I'm just I had to close down what we had open and start all
Oh,
over.
goodness. Okay. Sorry about that.
My apologies, Rob. I'll let you do your thing.
That's okay. All right.
It's the snow. We're blaming everything tonight on the snow. There it is. Here we go. And all you got to do is from beginning. Perfect.
Okay, you're just seeing the image, right?
Correct.
All right. Good. Okay, so thanks very much, Bruce, for the introduction and for your invitation to speak. Hello, everyone. A few familiar faces out there, Bill and Jeff and Gary. So anyway, thanks to all of you for tuning in today. As most of you probably know, the man after which your Sabre chapter is named, Clyde Sukeforth, appears in this famous Norman Rockwell painting, Tough Call. Peeking out behind the umpires with hat in hand, Sukeforth is otherwise obscured from view. I have a story to tell about another baseball man who's been hidden from view, an old New York Giant, Danny Gardella. I'd like to talk about my book for about 25 minutes, and then we can open it up for questions and comments. Sports writers condemned and red-baited him. Brooklyn Dodgers owner Branch Rickey called him a communist. The Florida congressman said that he would be the death knell for the sport that has kindled the fires of ambition in thousands of young Americans. The target of these and many other attacks was Danny Gardella, who had the nerve to seek fair pay for his labors as a ball player. In response, he protested, "I was no communist for exercising my American rights." I have a story to tell about a baseball player, but it's also a bigger story about Major League sports in the US and about post-World War II America, especially its labor battles, its anti-communist hysteria, and its challenges to the American dream. In baseball, besides the exploits of ball players on the field, we also tend to identify individuals who change the game or who stand out because of their antics or their personalities. We recognize as pioneers, for example, players such as Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Jim Bouton, and Curt Flood. And we also recognize characters or eccentrics, players such as Dizzy Dean, Casey Stengel, Yogi Berra, and Bill Spaceman Lee. But one neglected baseball pioneer and eccentric was former New York Giants ball player Danny Gardella. Yet almost nobody's... Sorry, it's my dog. Yet almost nobody's ever heard of him. In particular, millionaire athletes, not only in baseball, but in all major league sports owe him a million thanks. But they have no idea who he was, even though he was a phenomenon in his own time in the late 1940s. Consider, for example, his nicknames. Nicknames for ball players have had a long history in baseball. If you were anyone at all in baseball, you had to have been given a nickname, but only occasionally would you have more than one. Danny, however, was given more than 36 nicknames, which suggests the exceptional kind of character he was. What if you discovered a Zelig-like figure who showed up where you least expected, who was a ball player who played professionally in the US, Mexico, Cuba, and Canada, who was also an accomplished acrobat, gymnast, and Golden Gloves boxer, who was also a fitness, nutrition, and weight training pioneer, who was also a gifted opera, Broadway, and vaudeville singer who posed as a model and once studied to be an actor, who was also a notorious prankster and comedian, who, despite being a high school dropout, was also a self-taught poet, philosopher, and psychologist. And what if you discovered that this same ball player established a landmark precedent for challenging antitrust violations, who also forced Major League Baseball to stop rating players from the Mexican and other foreign leagues, who also helped break Major League Baseball's color line, who also inspired the creation of the American Baseball Guild labor union for players' rights, who also won the first successful federal court challenge to the slavery and suppressed wages of baseball's reserve clause, paving the way for free agency, who was also repeatedly regarded by major league owners as dangerous. If you discovered all these things, as I did about Danny Gardella, then you would do as I did and write the biography of his life and times in post-war America. I first ran across Gardella when writing my earlier book, The Empire Strikes Out, A History of Baseball's Relationship with U.S. Foreign and Military Policy. As Major League Baseball has projected itself and the American empire into foreign lands, Danny showed up in one of the many U.S. interventions, this time in Mexico. More recently, Peter Dreyer and I wrote 2 books, Major League Rebels and Baseball Rebels, and Danny emerged again, this time challenging Major League Baseball's wage slavery in the 1940s. Gardella seemed important, yet little had been written about him. And why would the baseball owners regard him as dangerous? When I discovered that he was also a notorious character and a bit of a Renaissance man, I was convinced to write his story. I was also intrigued because the heart of Gardella's story occurred at a time that's long fascinated me, the post-World War II period. The U.S. was fresh off its triumph in the so-called Good War, which left America on top of the world, with the strongest economy and a positive, even grateful reputation. The U.S. seemingly had everything going for it, providing the opportunity to finish America's progressive New Deal initiatives. We could champion peace rather than war, international law rather than empire, an economy for the many rather than the few, and justice rather than exploitation for workers, minorities, and women. Since essentially we did none of those things, I always wanted to know more about why. I was particularly struck by the labor wars of this period and then the nation's consumption by an anti-communist Red Scare hysteria. How could an era that held so much promise end up ruining so many lives? Given the ruined lives portrayed, for example, in the 1946 blockbuster film The Best Years of Our Lives, the title seemed more like an ironic or satirical portrayal of the post-war era. Why did the nation seem to be making so many decisions away from progress, peace, and justice rather than embracing them when it had its best chance in its history to accomplish those ends? I wondered how I could explore this period from a new perspective through the lens of baseball and Danny Gardella. It also happened that my mother and father were New York City contemporaries of Gardella from the Bronx and Queens, respectively, and thus exploring Danny's life gave me insights into the lives of my own parents. Danny Gardella grew up in Little Italy in the Bronx, New York in the 1920s and 1930s, playing sandlot ball with his brother Al. They were inspired by fellow Italians in the major leagues, especially Tony Lazzeri and Joe DiMaggio. The teenage Gardella was signed, along with his brother, into the Detroit Tigers minor league system. Despite his short stature, he was only 5'6" and 160 pounds. Gardella was powerfully built and always a threat to hit the long ball. But from 1938 to 1940, Danny was shuttled from one minor league town to another, traded into the Cleveland Indians organization, and then became the property of the Washington Senators. And property is a key word here. Pessimistic about his career, Danny quit organized baseball for a series of blue-collar jobs for the next few years. Playing in a shipyard industrial league, however, Gardella was spotted by a New York Giants scout and signed to its top farm team in Jersey City in 1944. Quickly developing a reputation for his idiosyncrasies, he also excelled on the field, and the Giants promoted him to the Major League Club for a meager $1,500 salary. He became an immediate sensation with his hitting, if not his fielding. When he cooled off, he returned to Jersey City to end the 1944 season. With another impressive start in Jersey City in 1945, however, Giants player-manager Mel Ott, shown here on the left, brought Gardella back up to the Giants early in the season, and he never left. Danny hammered the ball all year, was elevated to batting cleanup, won ball games with late-inning home runs, and replaced Hall of Famers Joe Medwick and then Ott himself in the outfield, thus earning a pay increase to $4,000. Danny became a fan favorite, inspiring the Gardella Garden rooting section, the outfield bleachers, a Danny Gardella fan club, and the first ever fan banners at the Polo Grounds flown on his behalf. Ending the season as a Giants leader in hits and RBIs, he was also one of the National League leaders in home runs. Despite his brief time in the majors, Gardella was already known for his antics and eccentricities. Fielding balls hit to him in the outfield was sometimes an adventure for Danny, although unfairly exaggerated by sports writers. A bodybuilder, when baseball frowned upon weight training, he was also a vegetarian among steak eaters, and some people believe he invented the smoothie. He'd walk on his hands in the outfield, perform one-arm handstands on his bedpost or the dugout roof, and hypnotize his teammates for better performance. On team train rides, he'd quote Freudian psychology or Shakespeare's Macbeth, or poetry such as Thomas Gray's Elegy or Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee. In the dugout, on the team bus, and almost anywhere, he'd sing opera, such as Puccini's Tosca or Verdi's Aida, and ballads and show tunes such as Danny Boy, The King of Broken Hearts, and All the Things You Are. He'd catch balls dropped from Navy blimps and hang from train trestles and the window ledges of skyscrapers. But Danny had also been a star during the 1945 season and expected a significant raise. Instead, the Giants offered him only $500 more for his 1946 contract. When he protested, the Giants banned him from the team hotel and field during spring training. With Gardella bound by the reserve clause, they knew Danny had no choice. When Gardella still resisted, Giants owner Horace Stoneham announced that he would sell Danny back into the minor leagues. So what is the reserve clause? As many of you likely know, since the early days of professional baseball in the late 1800s, a reserve clause appeared in every ballplayer's contract. When you signed your contract, you were bound to one team for that season and also reserved to play for that same team the next season as long as it kept renewing your contract. And although the ballplayer was bound as property, the team could release him with only 10 days' notice and cancel the contract. In effect, the ballplayer became enslaved to the team that first signed him, or to whichever team he was either traded or sold. If he was sold, the ballplayer received none of the purchase price for his value. Since the reserve prevented the ballplayer from offering his services to other teams to the highest bidder for a better salary, this suppressed his wages for nearly 100 years. Except for a few stars, ballplayer salaries were kept low. Owners kept getting rich, paying low wages because they knew ball players had no other place to play without Major League Baseball. As a group, the Major League Baseball teams formed a monopoly, potentially regulated by America's antitrust laws. To promote competition, those laws forbid collusion among companies. Yet all MLB teams were colluding with each other to impose a common contract, including the reserve clause, so that players could not try to sell themselves to other teams. Although antitrust had been around since 1890, antitrust laws, they had been around since 1890, they were not well enforced, thanks largely to Supreme Court decisions that manufactured loopholes for monopolies well into the 1930s. And in 1922, the court had specifically ruled that Major League Baseball wouldn't be subject to antitrust laws. And the 1920s are where the reserve clause and antitrust story has typically ended, until it's picked up again 4 decades later in the late 60s and early 1970s, when the saga of Curt and Marvin Miller emerges, finally leading to free agency in baseball and then in other sports in the late 1970s. And of course, ball players have enjoyed considerable riches ever since, now free to periodically sell their skills to the highest bidder. The highest earner, the LA Dodgers' Shohei Ohtani, made $70 million in 2025. The average salary is $5 million. The median player salary is $1.3 million, and $760,000 is the minimum salary. But that gap between the 1920s and the 1970s misses an essential ingredient in the free agency evolution. It's the missing story of Danny Gardella in the late 1940s and his neglected role in providing the first and ultimately a lasting challenge to the major league owners and their repressive contracts. Before free agency, since ball players couldn't sell their services to the highest bidder among the teams in the existing major leagues, the only way they could possibly escape the reserve was if another major league became available. The existing major league always fought fiercely to try to prevent this from happening, but it did occur a few times when the National League was challenged in 1882 by the American Association, in 1890 by the Players League, and in 1901 by the American League. And the combined National and American Leagues were challenged again in 1914 by the Federal League. But in each case, the players escaped the reserve clause for only a year or two when it was reimposed and their salaries and mobility were slashed once again. This was the situation ball players faced in the late 1940s when owners were making big profits while suppressed player wages remained lower than before the war. The ball clubs remained, lost my place here. Ball clubs remained dedicated to protecting the reserve clause and warding off any new major league. But they weren't counting on Danny Gardella and the Mexican League in 1946. Prior to that season, working as a trainer and masseuse at Al Rune's, an upscale New York gym, Gardella met Jorge Pascal, a wealthy team owner in the Mexican League, which he was essentially running. Pascal knew about Danny's strong 1945 season, couldn't believe how little the Giants were paying him, and told Danny he'd pay him a lot more to play for his team. Pascal had already bolstered the Mexican League by luring dozens of Negro League black players who were still banned from the U.S. major leagues. A multimillionaire, Pascal now had his eye on white major leaguers to further transform his Mexican League into a major league. When Danny was shunned by the Giants for protesting his insulting pay raise, Gardella remembered Pascal's offer. Instead of allowing the Giants to profit from selling him to a minor league team, Danny jumped to the Mexican League to play for the Veracruz Blues for more than twice his major league salary. But he didn't jump alone. Instead, Gardella led the movement to lure other underpaid major leaguers to join him, including some stars. With the help of Pascal's big salary offers, Gardella helped recruit more than 25 other white major leaguers to the Mexican League, launching MLB's biggest nightmare, the ability of players to escape the reserve clause and get better salaries because another major league had emerged for them to play in. Here are some of the other jumpers: Vern Stevens, Max Lanier, Mickey Owen, Fred Martin, Red Hayworth, and then bottom row, Lou Klein, Alex Carrasquel, Bobby Estrella, and Mo Franklin. But with owner Horace Stoneham having a reputation for paying the worst salaries, the Giants had the most jumpers. Danny Gardella, Sal Magley, Nap Reyes, George Houseman, Roy Zimmerman, Adrian Zabala, Harry Feldman, and Ace Adams. Danny's jump also helped break the color barrier in baseball. The white players he inspired to follow him were now playing agreeably not only against black players from both the U.S. and other nations on Mexican teams, but also playing with and sometimes even being managed by blacks. It made it harder for major league team owners to claim it could never be done in the U.S. and helped baseball commissioner Albert Chandler to allow Jackie Robinson's integration initiative to proceed in 1947. Here are some of the black Negro League players Gardella and the other white jumpers played with and against. Ray Dandridge, Theodore Smith, Ted Radcliffe, Martin Tehigo, and then bottom row, Booker McDaniel, Burris Wright, Terrace McDuffie, and Ray Brown. In response, MLB blacklisted Gardella and the other jumpers to punish them and deter others from following, since the Mexican League, free from the reserve clause, was threatening MLB's low-wage business model and tempting big-name players such as Ted Williams, Stan Musial, and Bob Feller. The 5-year ban essentially meant ending players' major league careers if they tried to return. It also blacklisted them from the minor leagues and even from semi-pro baseball. When Danny returned to the U.S., he was deprived of his ability to earn a living playing baseball and singled out as a pariah. After Mexico, Gardella played 2 winters in Cuba, where he was the home run champ in his second season. He resorted to barnstorming around the U.S. with other jumpers to try to make a little money. Then he played and starred in the Provincial League in Quebec, Canada, leading Drummondville to the QPL Championship in 1949. Beginning in 1945, despite the cheery assumptions about America's post-war economy, prosperity for American workers was fleeting. Corporate America began a war on labor. The U.S. had rejected full employment, FDR's Economic Bill of Rights, and other initiatives for economic democracy. Conservatives and corporate lobbyists secured a series of anti-union right-to-work laws from state legislatures. The post-war Republican Congress passed the repressive Taft-Hartley Act in 1947, targeting unions, imposing loyalty oaths, and persecuting labor activists who were red-baited in the emerging Cold War Red Scare. American workers were on the defensive, struggling to protect their progress toward a decent standard of living. Wars between labor and capital dominated the post-war era, with workers launching hundreds of strikes in 1945 and 1946 alone. Just as Curt Flood would later claim that he was influenced by the 1960s social movements, Danny was influenced by the enormous labor activism of the late 1940s. His rebellion helped inspire the creation of the American Baseball Guild, a new attempt to organize players into a labor union. And he sued Major League Baseball. For challenging the reserve clause and MLB's antitrust exemption, he was condemned and red-baited for allegedly trying to destroy baseball in America. After a long battle, the Gardella versus Chandler legal case finally reached the Federal Appeals Court for the Second Circuit in 1949. Confident the court would reaffirm the 1922 Supreme Court decision that granted organized baseball an antitrust exemption, the owners were shocked when instead the reserve clause was condemned. The rebuke came not from just any judges, but instead from 2 of the most esteemed appellate court judges in American history, Jerome Frank, shown here on the left, and Leonard Hand. Frank claimed that, quote, "We have here a monopoly which, in its effect on ball players, possesses characteristics shockingly repugnant to moral principles that, at least since the war between the states, have been basic in America, as shown by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, condemning involuntary servitude. The reserve clause results in something resembling the peonage of the baseball player." close quote. As a result, Gardella was granted a new trial with the weight of these two jurists hanging over the outcome. Fearing a loss, the owners offered a financial settlement that Gardella sought to refuse, but ultimately could not, given his impoverished circumstances and the likelihood that he'd remain blackballed in professional baseball. Sure enough, after being restored briefly to the majors for one at-bat with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1950, he was quickly dropped and blacklisted again. But Gardella's judicial decision, the only federal court rejection of the reserve clause, lived on. During the 1950s on into the 1960s, it inspired multiple lawsuits against MLB by subsequent baseball players, beginning with minor leaguers, and also court cases challenging the reserve clause and other legal abuses in the National Football League, the National Hockey League, and the boxing, horse racing, and even the dog show industries. The so-called Gardella effect also inspired grand jury challenges and 2 congressional investigations into the baseball industry. Every single legal challenge to MLB's reserve clause and antitrust exemption was based on Gardella's precedent. In the mid-1960s, major leaguers, not just minor leaguers, as a group finally began to push back against their reserve clause oppression. Under Marvin Miller's guidance, the Major League Baseball Players Association began to emerge as a real labor union, getting owner concessions by threatening another, quote, Gardella lawsuit. Then in 1969, Curt Flood refused to be traded from the St. Louis Cardinals, and the more familiar story unfolded. Flood sued MLB to challenge the reserve clause and the antitrust exemption. But less known is that once again, the Gardella court decision played a central role, with Flood's legal brief quoting Jerome Frank's condemnation of baseball's peonage system. Although Flood ultimately lost his 1972 Supreme Court case, it finally raised the consciousness of the ball players and inspired them to defeat the reserve clause by other means in 1975. That year, baseball players and soon major leaguers in all sports were granted free agency, which began their rise into untold riches. And the owners got richer too. Danny, of course, enjoyed none of those riches. Gardella's vaudeville and Broadway singing career in the U.S. and Canada was promising but fairly short-lived, and he spent most of the rest of his life toiling at a series of blue-collar jobs, almost completely forgotten. He died in 2005 at the age of 85. While Danny Gardella wasn't in the room where and when it happened, his rebellion sacrificed his career and began the process of freeing ball players from their shackles and miserly incomes. The Major League Baseball Players Association became the nation's most successful labor union. Millionaire ball players owe Danny a million thanks, yet none of them know who he was, or what an entertaining character he turned out to be, or what he helped accomplish on their behalf. A neglected pioneer, hopefully that can begin to change on this, the 50th anniversary of free agency. Of course, there's a lot more to say about Gardella's life and times, but I think I'll stop there for questions. Thanks for listening.
If you have a question tonight for Rob, go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. There's another button marked raise hand. Raise your hand and we'll get you in line to ask questions about Dangerous Danny Gardella tonight. My question, Curt Flood seems to get all the glory. And hearing this story, I'm learning a lot tonight. I never knew anything. And one thing I am learning tonight, Rob, that I got on back channel is that I've been mispronouncing your name. It is Elias. So
yes.
I apologize for that.
No problem.
It is
very
nice.
Common.
I've heard that it's very common, but it is also the right thing to do to pronounce the name correctly.
That's okay. No problem.
It's a professional act. What was it? Does Flood get all the glory just because it's a sexier story?
Well, it's first of all, it's more recent. There was much more
Yeah.
publicity, attached to it, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. Flood deserves an enormous amount of credit. So I just think that you can trace it back to a somewhat earlier start, and so, I think sometimes we tend to think that, well, you had to only focus on people who are right there when the change literally happened. But I think, change happens over a period of time. Things, change is a matter of building on what came before. And I think that's the part that was left out as far as why Gardella got started. Also, he played Major League Baseball for a very, very brief time, whereas Flood was a star, right? I mean, people knew about Flood. He was easy to remember as a ball player, and of course closer to our own time. So I think that's part of the explanation.
All right. So before I get to the hands raised up, I'm going to go to the Ryan in the chat because he is having trouble with his microphone tonight. His question is there a connection between New York Senator Manuel Sellers' Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust on Baseball, the Tool versus Yankee case, 1953, and Danny Gardella's case? Good Lord, that was a mouthful, McClanahan. Come on.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, there's a connection to both of them. One of the main reasons that Emmanuel Seller called those hearings was because of what the case that Danny Gardella was pursuing. That it at least got into the news, and it was an issue back then, even if we don't remember it. And then the Gardella case also was part of the precedents that were used in the Toulson case, and that one went all the way to the Supreme Court. And of course, they lost that case, but nevertheless, it was another sort of attempt along the way to try to break through and do something more decent for the players and their careers.
Excellent. Very good. Ryan, we appreciate the good humor, my guy. Thank you very much. Hey, Dixie, you're up, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Go get him.
Great report. The interesting thing is all the places that Danny Gardella succeeded after Major League Baseball. It's quite a line of stuff, quite a line of places. I have a small point because my proofreader's eye never quits. You have a slide that has a whole bunch of names on it, and one of them is from the National Football League, George Ruderman. I think it's George Ratterman, who was later a quarterback for the Browns.
So I have the spelling.
You had the spelling R-U instead of R-A.
Okay. Well, I'll fix that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was taking a look to see if I could scare it up quickly, but the Google box is not cooperating as well for me. I'm going to go to the chat before I go to Stephen Meyerson.
Well, let me just add to that because I just to emphasize that, I think that was another remarkable thing about this is that the people running these other leagues and other sports were paying attention as well, and they were concerned that that Gardella's case would be used to challenge the way in which they were running their businesses as well. So, it wasn't just confined to baseball. It was a live issue being watched by other sports as well.
The impact that he had is, at least from my view at 30,000 feet, is monstrous, yet he's not really well known.
No.
And you're doing a service to Danny.
That's why I wrote the book.
There you go, to get his name out there. John Graff in the chat, I'm going to him. Challenges to free agency had an earlier start, to be sure, perhaps also going back even before Gardella, to when the Negro League players risked their U.S. careers to play abroad, including in Mexico and Pascual. So what say you to that, Rob?
Yeah, well, you can take the story back, to John Montgomery Ward if you'd like to.
And Jeff Cohen said that in the chat too.
Yeah, and the first players union, the Brotherhood Union, and the Players League, and so there was just a period of time from that that time in the late 1800s before things sort of, started up again, and there were, challenges were, worth focusing on. And I think the main one again was the Gardella challenge. But sure, you can trace it back because it's been a long-standing problem. The players realized that they were getting exploited long before Curt Flood and long before Danny Gardella. It was a question of whether they could mount something that would be a significant challenge.
A tale as old as time. Stephen Meyerson, you're up. Stephen, how are you?
Good evening, Bruce and all. Robert, what was the history of the Mexican League? Why did it only last a short time? When did it end? And did players like Sal Magli get back without having to wait 5 years?
Yeah. Okay. So the Mexican League was going quite strong several years. I would say maybe eight to 10 years prior to when Gardella led this rebellion. And Pascal, again, Jorge Pascal was largely responsible for this. So he had started this process of trying to bolster the Mexican League and make it into a legitimate major league by recruiting players from all over the Caribbean, but also recruiting a lot of black players from the United States, black players who couldn't play in the United States from the Negro leagues. And it was quite strong, but he wanted to make it stronger. And of course, he wanted to bring this new infusion of white ball players from the major leagues, and had his eye on, some much bigger stars even than the ones that actually came. As far as how that went, well, it worked for a couple of years, but it didn't go as well as he thought it would. So it kind of petered out sooner than his ambitions were initially. And it wasn't that many years later actually that he actually died in a plane crash. And so the Mexican League then didn't achieve the level that he wanted it to, although because there was this challenge and this real conflict between MLB and Pascal and the league, the Mexican League was given a special status as a part of organized baseball. Eventually, this is a little further down the line, and so it got a little bit better status as compared to the treatment that other leagues in other Caribbean nations or Central American nations actually received. As far as Sal Magli was concerned, Sal stayed in the Mexican League longer. He did very well there. He had 2 20-game winning seasons in his time in the Mexican League. And then he tried to come back. He was also out of work, just like Danny was. And he, like Danny, signed on with the Quebec Provincial League, and he did sensationally there. He was another 20-game winner for Drummondville, same team that Danny played for. And it was during that 1949 season that the ban was rescinded by Commissioner Chandler, which gave then the jumpers a chance to return earlier than scheduled. In other words, it was a 5-year ban, but this was only 3 years into the ban. And Magli was very appreciative of the Quebec Provincial League for signing him, giving him a job, and he refused to go back, even though the Giants wanted to sign him right away. And he finished out the season with Drummondville, and they won the championship. And then he was signed to the Giants the next year. And Magli's story is really interesting, I think, because he credits his time in the Mexican League with really teaching him how to become a successful pitcher. And he said whatever success he had once he got to the major leagues, he felt was because of that. So he's a sort of interesting side story. And Danny and Sal were friends.
Yeah, Sal's first 3 years back, 50, 51, and 52 were fantastic. I think he was in his second year in. He won 20 some odd games, led the league in wins. And if I recall correctly, historically his WAR was almost 7 that year. He was really something to see in 51, I believe it was. Let's go to the president of the New York Giants Preservation Society, Gary Mintz. How you doing, Gary?
Thanks, Bruce. Rob, what a great presentation again.
Thank
And
you.
I just want to, deserve recognition for winning the Seymour Award for Saber as the most outstanding book. You took a guy who,
Thank you.
nobody knew about and was really influential in the game. And my question or comment is, with these players making so much money, most of them have no idea about the history of the players from their own franchises or the game. And it's really a nod to you that you brought this guy up, Danny Gardella, because they most certainly have no idea who this gentleman was. So kudos to you and great seeing you again and congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. You're right. He's unknown, and I think actually there are many ball players who don't know much about Curt Flood either. So even someone more recent, being focused on baseball's history is not necessarily what major leaguers spend their time on, but they should.
Absolutely.
Gary is correct that this book was the 2026 Seymour Medal winning book. And that, folks, that ain't hay. That is a accomplishment that deserves to be lauded. The list of books that has won this award. You go out to saber.com, search Seymour Medal, and just take a look at the list. Robson, great company. And this is a fine addition
Thank
to
you,
the
Bruce.
Seymour Medal winning list. Joe Ross. What's going on, Joe?
A quick question for you, Rob. First, great presentation. It was really one of the more informative ones that we've had here. So I think you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
My quick question is, are you any relation to the Sports Bureau that handles all of Major League Baseball?
No, I'm not. Although when I was teaching at Tufts and I had to put up all the research I had done and the books and the articles, I did put one of the old Elias guides on that stack and pretended that I was actually related. And of course, everyone saw through that. But no, I'm not related to the Elias Sports Bureau.
Too bad. You can tell everybody. I won't mind. You can tell everybody you are. You can tell them.
There you go.
Cousin.
I could say that, but I'm
and
not.
then ask them for a share of the profit.
Yeah, if only, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don Lavalette will tell you I have a running gag where I as a kid used to say that my Uncle Bob pitched for the Brewers. I actually had an Uncle Bob who's long since gone, but I used to say, yeah, my Uncle Bob pitched for the Brewers, and it didn't get me any credit on the playground in school, but it was fun too. Hey, Phil saved me here, man. How you doing, Phil?
Doing all right, thanks.
Good to see you.
Hey, Rob, you did a great presentation. Really fascinating topic to me. I've done a little research on some of this myself. I was fascinated to see in my research how Toulson and Walter Kowalski sort of piggybacked off of Gardella in his case. It did them no good. They lost in court. And then I noticed one of the fellows you mentioned, Jack Corbett, also fought the reserve clause, and he followed in Gardella's footsteps too. It was interesting. He was a minor league owner, and
Yes.
he was fighting the reserve clause because baseball wouldn't let him use a couple of Mexican League players.
Exactly.
So there's this topic gets on both sides of the equation here, and there's you got these guys in the early 50s all fighting this in federal court and all losing. The other thing that I thought was interesting was how little attention it got in the press at the time. The news accounts are short, sketchy. It's very skimpy. It's nothing like what we
And Phil froze up.
known than people like Gardella and Toulson and Kowalski.
Yeah. Well, they sometimes they lost in court, but other times they were bought off. and these were minor leaguers, except for that owner that you mentioned. And so it wasn't until, later with Flood that major leaguers started to step up and challenge.
Mark Fishbon keeps doing this. Mark, do you have a question? If you do, you're going to have to unmute. Go down to the bottom of the screen. There's an audio button. There, you got it. There
Okay.
he is.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know how to do the little hand with the computer. I'm an orangutan with this stuff. I love the presentation, but my question is, who funded his lawsuit? Because he was not making a lot of money in those days. I'm just curious to take it all the way up through the courts. Who was the money behind it?
Yeah, it was based on if the case was won, then he would have to split the proceeds. So what happened is when he finally accepted a financial settlement, the award was $60,000, but half of that had to go to his attorney.
So it was a contingent fee.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So they
case.
So they just pursued it, and he didn't have to put up any money, and he wasn't, he was only going to get a portion of it if he won. So so he got actually not just half of that. He actually got $29,000 because they owed another attorney another $1,000. So so he got $29,000 out of that.
Being an attorney myself, that's a high contingency fee.
Yes,
but good for him.
I'll say it is. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Rob, tell them how to get the book.
Well, the usual places, right? The online stores, of course, Amazon and Barnes and Noble. The publisher is Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury bought Rowman and Littlefield, which was the previous sort of sub-publisher, but I think everything is now consolidated under Bloomsbury, so you can go there. And I think they're offering a discount there at that site, and then also Amazon usually has a discount as well. They tell me it's in a few bookstores, but I couldn't tell you where.
If you are here in New Hampshire, I suggest Gibson's bookstore in Concord. If they don't have it on the shelf, they will get it for you. It's one of the best small bookstores in the state. Hey, let's do this again next week, March 2nd, with Vanessa Viola and Fabio Montella and their presentation, What Does the Map Say? Storytelling and visual representation of Negro League stadiums through GIS mapping. The sign-up link is available in the chapter meeting booklet and at the Sabre events calendar. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you're not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, Sabre boasts more than 35 different research committees, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world, like Rob Elias. For more information, go to sabre.org today. Rob Elias, you're fantastic. Thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce, and thanks for all of you for tuning in.
Great presentation, man. We'll have this up on the channel in a day or two. Let's get everybody out of here. We'll see everybody next week. Have a good night, folks.
Bye.